Hi everyone, it's Brian just with a final video talking about the fasting experience that I had just over a week ago. So it's been a week since I've finished the fast, and I just wanted to recap on some of the highlights, the things that I learned, some of the things that I monitored, just so you have an idea of how I went about it. This video is by no means medical advice, but if you do your own research and find out more about fasting, what it can do for you, some of the risks involved as well, and if it seems right for you, you can start experimenting with shorter fasts, so less than 24 hours, and then eventually working your way up. So my fast lasted 130 hours, so almost 5.5 days. It's the longest fast that I've ever done and the most strict. So all I had was water throughout the entire week. I didn't have any green tea or black coffee, which I've used before on shorter fasts of 3 to 4 days. So the main reason that I was experimenting with fasting is to activate autophagy. Now, I talked about that in one of the earlier videos. It's quite fascinating, the process of your body breaking down tissues and cells that aren't functioning optimally, so that you can recycle the material to build new healthy cells and regenerate other tissue. So that process is most highly activated in a starvation state in ketosis, so it takes about 2 to 3 days to get there, which is why a longer fast is best for that. You get benefits from intermittent fasting, eating only during a certain eating window during the day, but not nearly the amount of autophagy. So that's the main thing. I also wanted to talk about some of the stats that I monitored throughout the week. So I check my weight every day, which is pretty basic, as well as my blood glucose, and periodically I check my blood pressure. So after about 24 to 48 hours, my blood glucose was down to about 3.9, and then after 48 hours it was about 3.3 and stayed pretty well steady at that 3.3 for the remainder of the fast. It didn't change much. So monitoring your blood glucose would be a good thing to do if you want to experiment with fasting. As far as weight changes, lost the most weight in the first 24 hours, dropped about 5.5 pounds. And then each day afterwards was about 1 pound to 2 pounds, except for the last day where I was only down about 0.2 pounds, which is a good signal that my body's got the most benefits out of the fast, and it was time to start eating again. Temperature was another thing that I monitored, which I monitor regularly anyway, and that stayed super consistent throughout the week, my waking temperature. So the hardest part about the fast is just not eating food when it's around you. I talked about that in one of the other videos as well, and kind of breaking that cultural programming to eat around everything that we do, everything social, and so I found that coming off the fast, I was able to appreciate food a lot more. Tastes were much more vibrant. I could taste salt and sweetness much more pronounced. So adjusting your palate after not eating for so many days would also be considered one of the benefits. One of the surprise kind of findings or experiences that I had is that I was only sleeping for a short amount of time at night, and waking up feeling super energized. Normally I have a hard time getting up out of bed as it is, and I was just amazed to be waking up between like 4 and 6 a.m. Feeling ready to go. So that is probably one of the characteristics of this ketosis state. It actually gives you a little bit more energy so that you can find food in a kind of historical sense. You need more energy so that you can find food so that you can continue to survive. So it's a temporary thing, not a long-term thing that you want to be doing more than about 3 to 5 days. And even doing the 3 to 5 day water fast, it's something you only want to do once or twice, maybe 3 or 4 times a year at most if you have issues to clear up. I was also surprised that my strength was maintained through the whole fast. After adjusting to being in ketosis, day kind of 2 or 3, my strength was not affected at all. Doing my morning exercises, push-ups and sit-ups, I had just as much muscle strength and energy as I would otherwise. I did notice that doing my Wim Hof breathing exercises, I would tend to get kind of clammy or sweaty after 2 or 3 rounds of breathing, so I just reduced my 4 to 5 rounds down to 2 or 3 for the last few days. And that seemed to be okay. The last thing that I wanted to touch on, with posting this on social media, expected to get a few comments of concern. Not eating for 5 days is definitely something that's not part of the norm in our culture, because we're encouraged to eat quite regularly, snacking every couple hours. And although those concerns are valid, we want to make sure that everyone around us is healthy and not putting ourselves at risk. I feel like I've done my research and I've listened to my body coming into the fast and throughout the fast, and would have aborted the experiment early if my body was giving me signs that things were not working out all right. If anything, I was surprised by how well I felt. And the one comment that kind of strikes a nerve with a lot of people is, oh, you're not eating for 5 days, you're going to develop an eating disorder. So I've come across these comments before when researching fasting, and there is a lot of kind of shaming culture in people who choose to use fasting as a tool for their health. It is something that can be seen with eating disorders, but it's not something that necessarily leads to an eating disorder. There is, however, a condition called orthorexia. It's not quite as well known as anorexia or bulimia or some of those other eating disorders, but basically it is a mental health issue where you become fixated and obsessed with healthy or seemingly healthy behaviors such as exercise and healthy eating. It's fairly common in the vegan world, especially if you start getting into more narrow extremes like raw foodies. I've seen a few people that fit that kind of description. So that is a concern if you start to become obsessed with some sort of health protocol, whether it's the food you eat, what you don't eat, or compulsive exercise. That can be a symptom of a mental health issue. I feel like my mental health is quite stable. I'm quite grounded, and the reasons why I'm doing a fast are quite clear, at least to those that are closest around me. I communicate that pretty clearly, so I don't think that I'm at risk for any of those types of things. That being said, this video is online and people can kind of take what they want from it. So I highly encourage you to do your own research, the reasons why fasting might be beneficial, along with the risks that come along with fasting, especially if you have any other type of medical condition that you're dealing with. Always be sure to check with your doctor before doing anything like this. It's been a really cool learning experience. I've really appreciated eating food for the last week and hope to keep my diet fairly clean and making as much stuff as I can at home, just to be in a little bit more control over what I'm putting into my body on a regular basis. So I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and send me any ideas for other experiments that you'd like to see, or other topics that you'd like me to make a video on. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.